23 stab wounds. That is how many times the Roman Senate struck Julius Caesar on March 15th, 44 BC. But here is the detail that most people get wrong. Out of all 23 wounds, only one was fatal. One. The rest were shallow, desperate, clumsy. Senators tripping over each other, cutting their own hands with their blades, some of them too terrified to even aim properly. This was not the dignified, theatrical execution you have seen in movies. This was a room full of frightened old men, butchering the most powerful person on earth, and barely managing to do it. And the strangest part? Caesar knew it was coming. He was warned multiple times by multiple people, and he went anyway. This is not a story about a man who was murdered. This is a story about a man who chose to walk into the room where he would die. To understand why, you need to understand who Julius Caesar really was. And that story starts not with power, but with debt. In his early 20s, Caesar was essentially broke. He came from the Julian family, an old patrician bloodline that claimed descent from the goddess Venus herself. Prestigious name, empty pockets. Rome in the 1st century BC was a city where political careers were bought, not earned. You needed money to hold office, money to throw public games, money to bribe the right people, and Caesar had none of it, so he borrowed, massively, recklessly. By the time he was 30, he owed more money than most Roman senators would see in a lifetime. He was not building a career, he was gambling with borrowed chips, betting everything on the idea that if he climbed high enough, the debts would not matter anymore. And then something happened that tells you everything about who this man was. On his way to the island of Rhodes, pirates captured his ship. They held him for ransom and set the price at 20 talents of silver. Caesar laughed at them. He told them he was worth at least 50. While waiting for the ransom to arrive, he spent weeks with his captors, joking with them, reading them poetry, and promising, casually, cheerfully, that once he was free, he would come back and crucify every single one of them. The pirates thought it was hilarious. They liked him. Because when the ransom arrived and Caesar was released, he immediately gathered a small fleet, hunted the pirates down, and crucified them. Exactly as he said he would. Though, as a gesture of mercy, he had their throats cut first, so they would not suffer on the cross. That combination, charm, ruthlessness, and an absolute refusal to bluff, is the engine that drove everything that came after. Caesar's political rise was methodical. He allied himself with Pompey, the greatest military commander of the age, and Crassus, the richest man in Rome. Together, they formed what historians call the First Triumvirate. Not an official government body, more like a backroom deal between three men who realized they could control Rome if they stopped competing with each other. Caesar got what he needed most, a military command, specifically the governorship of Gaul. What happened in Gaul over the next 8 years is one of the most extraordinary military campaigns in recorded history. Caesar arrived in 58 BC with 4 legions and a province that covered only a strip of southern France. By the time he was done, he had conquered all of modern France, Belgium, parts of Germany, and twice invaded Britain. He fought an estimated 300 battles. His own account, because Caesar wrote his own war memoir in third person while simultaneously running the campaign, claims he killed over 1 million Gauls and enslaved another 1 million. Even if those numbers are exaggerated, the scale is staggering. But Gaul was never just about conquest. Every victory in Gaul was a message to Rome. Every captured tribe, every river crossed, every new territory annexed was building Caesar's political brand back home. He was generating the kind of fame, loyalty, and wealth that would make him untouchable. His soldiers did not fight for Rome, they fought for Caesar. He paid them from his own war profits, promoted based on merit instead of birth, and shared the hardships of the march. They would have followed him anywhere. That fact terrified the Senate. By 50 BC, Caesar's command in Gaul was expiring and Rome faced a crisis. The Senate, led by the conservative faction, demanded Caesar disband his legions and return to Rome as a private citizen. They knew that the moment Caesar lost his military command, he lost his legal immunity, and they could prosecute him, strip him of everything, and end his career. Caesar knew it too. Pompey, his former ally, had turned against him and now backed the Senate. The door to a peaceful return was shut. On January 10th, 49 BC, Julius Caesar stood on the northern bank of a small river called the Rubicon. Roman law was explicit. No general could bring his army across this boundary into Italy proper. To cross was treason, an act of war against the Roman Republic itself. Caesar stood there with the 13th Legion behind him and reportedly said, "The die is cast." Then he crossed. The civil war that followed lasted 4 years and stretched across the entire Mediterranean. Caesar chased Pompey to Greece, defeated him at the Battle of Pharsalus, then pursued him to Egypt, where Pompey was murdered by the Egyptian court before Caesar even arrived. It was in Egypt that Caesar met Cleopatra, but that is another story, one this channel has already told. From Egypt, he went to modern-day Turkey, where he defeated King Pharnaces so quickly that he summarized the entire campaign in 3 words. I came, I saw, I conquered, then to North Africa, then to Spain. One by one, every pocket of resistance fell. By 45 BC, Caesar was the undisputed master of the Roman world. And now came the question that would kill him. What was he going to do with that power? The answer is that Caesar moved fast and broke things. In just 2 years, he restructured the Roman calendar, the one we still use today, with minor modifications. He granted citizenship to communities across the former Gallic territories. He resettled veterans on public land. He reformed the courts, reorganized the provincial tax system, and launched massive public works projects. He packed the Senate with his own supporters, expanding it from 600 to 900 members, including men from Gaul and Spain, non-Romans in the eyes of the old aristocracy. And he accepted a cascade of unprecedented honors. Dictator for life, the right to wear a purple toga, a golden chair in the Senate, a month renamed in his honor, July. Was Caesar trying to become king? This is the question that historians still argue about. He publicly refused the crown when Mark Antony offered it to him during the festival of Lupercalia in February of 44 BC, but he refused it in a way that some read as theatrical, a performance of modesty designed to test the crowd's reaction. Others argue he genuinely did not want the title, that dictator for life already gave him every power a king would have without the word that Romans hated most. What is not debatable is how the Senate read the situation. 60 senators, led by Gaius Cassius Longinus and Marcus Junius Brutus, concluded that Caesar intended to destroy the Republic permanently. Whether they were idealists defending Roman liberty or jealous aristocrats protecting their own power depends on who you ask. Probably both. Human motives are rarely clean. The conspiracy took shape quickly. The date was set March 15th, the Ides of March. The location? A meeting hall adjacent to the theater of Pompey, where the Senate was temporarily convening. The plan was brutally simple: surround him, strike together, make it a collective act so that no single person bore the guilt. The morning of March 15th, Caesar almost did not go. His wife, Calpurnia, had nightmares the night before and begged him to stay home. A soothsayer had already warned him weeks earlier to beware the Ides of March. A sacrifice that morning produced unfavorable omens. The animal had no heart, according to the priests. Caesar wavered. He considered sending Mark Antony to dismiss the Senate on his behalf. Then Decimus Brutus, one of the conspirators, a man Caesar trusted deeply, arrived at his house and convinced him that canceling would look weak, that the Senate was planning to offer him the crown outside of Italy, and that staying home because of his wife's bad dreams would invite ridicule. Caesar relented. He went. When he arrived at the Senate, the conspirators were already in position. One senator, Tullius Cimber, approached first with a petition, grabbing Caesar's toga as if pleading. Caesar tried to wave him off, then Casca struck from behind, a clumsy slash across the shoulder. Caesar spun, grabbed Casca's arm, and stabbed back with his writing stylus, the only weapon he had. He shouted in Latin, "Casca, you villain, what are you doing?" Then the rest closed in. 23 wounds. Historians describe chaos. Senators slashing wildly, several accidentally cutting each other, blood on the marble floor, men slipping. Caesar fought at first, then, according to some accounts, pulled his toga over his face when he saw Brutus among the attackers. Whether he actually said, "You too, Brutus?" is uncertain. The Greek historian Suetonius records it in Greek, not Latin. Others say he said nothing at all. He collapsed at the base of a statue of Pompey by his former rival, immortalized in stone, looking down at his body. The symbolism was almost too perfect to be real. The assassins expected gratitude. They walked out into the forum, blades still bloody, shouting that they had liberated Rome from a tyrant. The crowd stared at them in silence. Then the crowd dispersed. Then Rome locked its doors. What followed was not liberation. It was 17 more years of civil war. Mark Antony, Caesar's right hand, turned the public funeral into a masterpiece of political theater, displaying Caesar's bloody toga and reading his will, which left money to every Roman citizen. The mob turned on the conspirators. Brutus and Cassius fled east, raised armies, and were defeated at the Battle of Philippi in 42 BC. Both committed suicide. Cicero, who had celebrated the assassination, was hunted down and killed, his severed hands nailed to the speaker's platform in the Forum. And out of all of this chaos, one person emerged, Gaius Octavius, Caesar's adopted son, who was 18 years old when his father was murdered. He would spend the next 13 years eliminating every rival, including eventually Mark Antony and Cleopatra, until he stood alone. The Senate gave him a new name, Augustus. The first Roman emperor, the conspirators killed Caesar to save the Republic. Instead, they created the empire, the very thing they feared most. One man with absolute power became permanent, and it lasted for 5 centuries. Caesar's name became a title, Kaiser in German, Tsar in Russian. 2,000 years later, we still count our days using his calendar and name our 7th month after him. The senators thought they were ending a story. They were starting one.